You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
Folks, I'm really excited for this episode today. I know you've probably seen in the news that there's been some attacks on the freedom we have with the solo 401k and the self-directed IRA. If you don't know what those are, stay tuned. You're about to find out what's in it for you. And guess what? The legislation where it was being attacked did not pass. So we are good to still use the solo 401k and the self-directed IRA, depending on your personal situation, to benefit yourself by making more money on your retirement dollars than you would leaving it in a typical 401k with a very limited set of investment options managed by someone who's always taking fees away from it, whether it performs or not. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Daniel Blue, aka Blue, with Quest Education. This company is purely in existence to help you figure out how to navigate the waters of these alternative investment vehicles to house your retirement funds and give you more freedom with what you can do with it. So without further ado, here is Blue. All right, Real Estate Runway family, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast, wherever you're tuning in from, YouTube, Amazon. We are everywhere these days, thanks to our amazing team at Streamline Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sutton, and I have with me a very distinguished guest, one Daniel Blue. Daniel is a Forbes contributor and owner of a seven-figure business called Quest Education and a best-selling author of the book, Blueprint to Your Best Retirement. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the solo 401k, the self-directed IRA, the difference in the two, and what's in it for you. Why would you even care what those things are? We're going to find out. Daniel, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Chad, I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you for having me on the show. Looking forward to rocking out with you.
I love it, man. I love it. Daniel, so you are, by the way, is it Dan, Daniel? What do you prefer?
A lot of people just call me Blue, but Dan, Daniel, Danny, they all work.
We're going to go with Blue. I like Blue.
Yeah.
So Blue. All right. So tell me a little bit about who Daniel Blue is before you became the owner of this seven-figure business called Quest Education. Where'd you come from?
So I came from California and grew up middle of the road. We weren't poor, we weren't rich. Had two parents in the house, and played sports and just hung out in California, skateboarded, had a really good life. Things really just changed dramatically when I was 12. Parents got divorced. My dad moved to Mexico, and now it's just my mom and I. And watched her struggle. Her being a single mom, and then with my dad out of my life, he's really close to me. I was really close to him, so that really hurt, seeing him go and him no longer being in my life, and made me have a lot of anger and resentment. So I started really struggling in school, and just barely passed high school, and just ended up getting addicted to drugs when I was 18 years old. Got addicted to Oxycontin, and then I ended up having a daughter at 19 years old that really shaped my life. So I was just Chad. I was a professional mistake maker. I made a lot of mistakes. 18, 19, 20 years old, got into sales, made some really good money there, made money, but spent more than what I was making because, I never knew what $100,000 a year looked like. Like, we didn't grow up with that much money. So when I started making six figures, 19, 20 years old in sales, I was a dummy with money. So, I'm grateful that I made a ton of mistakes, because it helped guide me and help me see where, okay, I'm touching the stove, I keep getting burned. Eventually I got to stop touching the stove.
I love that analogy. I mean, so you've made some mistakes in life. A lot of us have. Like you said, you went through a period where you're a professional mistake maker, but it sounds like you have a wonderful daughter that came out of it. You found a way to get a pretty awesome career going. Learned really quickly that just because you have money doesn't mean you're wealthy, and that led you at some point to start Quest Education. So what about your why took you that direction?
Yeah, so I wish I had this cool entrepreneur story like Gary Vee, right? Like hustling since middle school and like business owner in high school.
Man, Gary Vee could make flunking a test sound cool. So there's that,
I
right?
know, man. Like I that's not me. I didn't grow up wanting to be in business. It just came from necessity. Saw my mom struggling, as a single mom, and then stumbled into sales because of networking. I'm a college dropout. I don't have a family full of entrepreneurs. So it's not like I had this path carved out to be an entrepreneur. Really just stumbled into it. But sales was the catalyst. Got into sales. I was in the real estate space for a while, in real estate sales, and encountered the self-directed retirement account arena. The whole notion that someone could take an IRA or 401k and use it to invest into real estate, that blew my mind. And I first learned about that, probably about over 10 years ago. And I always thought retirement accounts were for stocks or for Wall Street, not alternative assets. So
As do
that
most people, by the way, Blue.
yeah, for sure. And so that seed was planted in my head, and I was like, man, that's some cool stuff. Like I could see myself doing that. So I changed careers. 32 years old now. This was about, I was 24. It's about 8 years ago. I changed careers, got into self-directed retirement account space. And then in my mid 20s, early 20s, probably after like 22, 23 years old, I was spending way less than what I was making, started to set money aside, started building my credit, and had money set aside to where, after having a pretty decent career in the quote unquote corporate space, 9 to 5 employee, I thought, and I could be captain of my own ship. And 3 years ago, I kind of put all the chips on the table, maxed out 0% credit cards, put a lot of my savings into the business, and started Quest Education 3 years ago. And here we are today.
That's fantastic. So with that, we're going to really get into the meat of Quest Education and what is a solo 401k and self-directed or SDIRA as they're commonly called. So first off, tell me what Quest Education does, and then let's really get into what those products are and why they matter.
Yeah, so the main problem that we solve in the marketplace is helping people access money in their retirement accounts penalty and tax free. Most people don't know that the 401k or IRA that they have, they actually can pull money out penalty and tax free, and use it in a lot of cool ways, without having to wait until they retire. Without having to pay 20, 30% in penalties and taxes to the IRS. So basically, having someone access money from their retirement account penalty and tax free can be done through a self-directed IRA, like you mentioned. We love the solo 401ks just because they have a lot more features than a self-directed IRA. For example, a solo 401k has a loan feature where you actually can be your own bank. You can take out a certain amount of money, penalty and tax free. And you could do this where you can use the money to pay off high interest rate credit card debt. You can use it to fund a business. We had a client the other day. She needed like $20,000 in inventory. She needed money for product for her online business, and she just used her retirement account to fund her business. So unlike an IRA, a solo 401k has a loan feature. So you can use the loan feature to do a lot of different things. You can use a solo 401k or self-directed IRA to own an asset like crypto. Probably invest with you, private lending, promissory notes, private equities, right? Like all of these cool things you can do inside of a retirement account without paying penalties and taxes and without using Wall Street.
So that's great. So your company basically provides that education and helps people bridge the gap between this SDIRA or solo 401k business and actually getting something done with it. So let's talk about those two. And by the way, folks, like the summary of this, you may not know this, and it's because the companies that provide these corporate retirement accounts, things like that, they don't want you to know this, right? They want you to invest in the little approved bucket of things that they have that they get to take their fees on, right? If you don't believe me, go to your Fidelity account or whoever manages that and ask them to have $100,000 to go buy a house with. They're not going to give it to you, right? And it doesn't work that way. So explain to me real quick, why someone, well, not even that. Let's talk about the solo 401k and the SDIRA and how they're different and who they're for. Let's start there.
Yeah, and the reason why you're gonna want a self-directed IRA or solo 401k is because you want options outside the stock market, right? Like you want to liberate your 401k or IRA. You want more freedom with your retirement account, right? Like if that's your train of thought, then this whole world that you and I are talking about right now would probably appeal to you, right? So the main difference between a self-directed IRA and a solo 401k is that loan feature, right? There's no loan feature on an IRA, but there is a solo 401k. Another difference is the high contribution limits. And what I mean by that is there's a ceiling. There's a certain amount of money that you can contribute into an IRA. It's about $6,000 a year. A solo 401k, depending on how much your business generates, you can contribute up to $58,000 per year. So, like for example, someone we're helping out with, here recently, they need some tax write-offs. So they're going to stick, 30, $40,000 in a solo 401k, and they'll get to deduct that money against their income. So now it's a tax write-off that year, and then that money can grow tax deferred, and they can invest it into syndication or crypto or whatever they want, right? Or what I see a lot of people doing right now is a Roth solo 401k. Could you imagine Chad taking, one of your listeners taking $20,000? And I know $20,000 isn't like millions of dollars, but hear me out. If you took 20,000, you put into a solo 401k, and you did that for 10 years straight, right? Now you've got $200,000 in a Roth solo 401k that you've contributed. And that $200,000, if it were to grow to $500,000 over a period of time, that now is 100% tax free. So you pay taxes on the 200,000, right? You pay taxes on what you put in. So you pay taxes on the seed, but that seed grew into 500,000 into this beautiful harvest. And now that harvest is 100% tax free. We all love tax free, right? So that's the power of something like a solo 401k.
That's beautiful. And so if I can, kind of add some color to it, it seems like, so this SDIRA or self-directed IRA, guys, it's just an IRA that you have control of, right? So anyone can go open an IRA or a self-directed IRA. There's really no restrictions on who can do that, right?
You just have to have earned income.
Earned income. So you have some sort of income from a 1099 or a W-2 job, something like that, right?
Or 401k from your old job, right? You
Okay.
leave your 9 to 5, you take that 401k from
Roll
your
it.
previous employer, move it into an IRA.
Okay. Are there any restrictions on who can set up a solo 401k?
Yeah, so you do have to be an entrepreneur. So just like it sounds, it's solo 401k, just like it sounds, solo 401k is for an entrepreneur who doesn't have any W-2 employees. So, maybe you have an online business or a real estate business that just has VAs or 1099 contractors. You could set up a solo 401k. So you have to have some kind of business activity, because everything I'm talking about is all IRS approved, right? Like
Yeah.
this isn't something that, I just made up this year or it just came out last year, right? Like this has been around in the IRS codes for decades, right? So that being said, the solo 401k designed by the IRS says you just have to have some entrepreneurship activity going on, and you can't have any W-2 employees in the picture, and then you qualify for a solo 401k.
Okay. Can you have 1099 employees?
Yeah, it's 1099
Okay.
contractors, right? Technically not
Contractors.
employees. So
Right.
you can have contractors, VAs, as long as they're 1099, not W-2, you're good to go.
That's really good. So really this solo 401k idea is for the business owner with business income that they would like to shelter in some way from taxes or pay a low rate of tax today in lieu of deferring taxes tomorrow. And then you have full control over that account, not to just dump it into a Fidelity or One America mutual fund bank, right? But some sort of, or really any alternative investment subject to very few restrictions.
Or let's just say you're a consultant. You do like real estate consulting, and you make, a little bit of money, not a ton of money, but you make enough money to pay the bills, right? So you technically are a solopreneur, but you've got a good chunk of money in an IRA or 401k from an old job. And the idea of accessing that money penalty and tax free and using that money to invest into real estate, crypto, or even their own business, or, paying off high interest rate credit card debt, they can take that IRA or 401k from their old job, move it into a solo 401k, and then either use the loan feature or invest directly from the solo 401k into that asset. So being able to, have more freedom with their investment choices.
Yeah, that's really good. And so, is there anything else we should say about the self-directed IRA, or do you want to kind of focus more on the solo 401k for the rest of this episode?
Self-directed IRA, just like a solo 401k, you want to be aware of prohibited transactions. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not here to steer anyone or, tell you to buy this stock. I'm just here to provide, and that's what our company does, just provide public information, just pull back that curtain and help you see information that is public information. But like you said, Wall Street does not bring this up for monetary purposes, right? But there's prohibited transactions. Prohibited transactions, for example, you can't use an IRA and invest it into a property that you own, right? And that you own and live in. You can own it, but you have to rent it out. You just can't live in it. You can't rent it out to a sibling. but you can rent it out to your cousin. It's silly, I know, but if you just Google IRS prohibited transactions, it'll give you that list. Solo 401k, same thing. So prohibited transactions, they apply for the IRA and the solo 401k. But one thing to consider is if you're using the loan feature on a solo 401k, because you're taking the money out of the plan, now you're not having to play by the IRS's rules with the prohibited transactions. So you literally can take 50,000, let's just say random number, out of the solo 401k penalty and tax free, and you can use that towards a down payment for a property that you rent out to your sibling, for example. And again, I'm just giving a random example, but the point I'm making is you're not having to play by those rules of the prohibited transactions. You can use that money however you want. So, with a self-directed retirement account, you want to make sure that you're on point with your taxes. It's always helpful to have a CPA that knows about self-directed retirement accounts. Unfortunately, a lot of CPAs and financial advisors, they're not familiar, nor do they really want to become familiar with self-directed retirement accounts. So just being aware of some of those prohibited transactions and things that you can't do, you want to make sure that you're aware of.
That makes sense. So let's dive a little deeper into the solo 401k, because I think that the self-directed IRA is really something that, like you said, as long as you follow the rules of prohibited transactions, really the main difference is for any individual who wants to. And I think you can put, what is it, 5,700 a year into it or something like that.
It's either 6,000 or
Okay.
7,000 if you're over 50 years old. So remember, you can convert $1 million
Right.
from a 401k from an old job into an IRA. So there's no ceiling on how much you move, but what you contribute, you do have that ceiling of the 6 or 7,000.
Okay, so that's a winning thing for most people, because you can now take some of that money that's been locked up in a very small subset of mutual funds or stock options that you can invest in and go do a lot more lucrative things with it. I mean, real estate is something I know and love. That's how Quattro Capital obviously makes its fortune for its investors, but there are other things you can invest in as well. So that alone is a win for our listeners here. Now, what I think we're trying to take this conversation towards is the awareness of this solo 401k for those of you who are either thinking about starting a venture or have a venture where you do not have employees. So the types of things you can do with this thing they just sound like they're really endless. So talking about the loan aspect of this, where you can make a loan to do some sort of a real estate investment, or maybe even fund your company, whatever that is. Are there any restrictions on who those loans can be made to
Yeah, so
out of the plan?
let's use a real life example. Let's just say someone has $100,000 in an IRA or 401k from their old job,
Mm.
and they move it into a solo 401k. So now they've got 100,000 in their solo 401k. The
Right.
loan feature per the IRS states that you can borrow 50% of the account value or $50,000, whichever number is less. You can take
Okay.
that money out, penalty and tax free, use it however you want. You do have to pay back the money within 5 years, and
Okay.
there's an interest rate of right around prime plus two,
Mm.
plus 1 to 2%. So we're telling people right now it's about 5.25%. The interest goes back to your solo 401k. So no one else is getting the interest but you. So
Mhm.
essentially, you're your own bank. Um, so let's go with this example. Someone has 100,000. Let's just say they needed $20,000 for their online business, e-commerce. They needed some marketing, product, et cetera, et cetera. So out of the 100,000, they take out 20,000 and they use that to invest in their business. Now they've got $80,000 in their solo 401k. And let's just say they like real estate like Chad does, and they take that 80,000 and they invest it into the real estate space, maybe private lending, maybe some syndications, promissory notes, yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. They do passive investments, right? So now they have that 80,000 invested in the real estate world that's giving them passive returns. And then that 20,000 they use to build their business, and then they're paying back that 20,000 that they took out within 5 years, so they're replenishing their retirement account and not robbing from their future, right? So they're just taking money from their right pocket, putting it in their left pocket, and not having to pay the nasty 20-30% in penalties and taxes.
Yeah, and so let's think about that. I mean, if you take that, I mean, who better to invest in than yourself, right? If you're a go-getter and you're like, wow, I can really turn this money. Let's say you take that inventory and you turn it into 10x profits or something like that, right? You didn't lose anything by not having that money sitting in the stock market, and the interest you paid on that money went back into your own account. So, and then it sounds like you have a 5-year balloon payment, which means at the end of 5 years, you have to gradually pay it back, or you have to at least have it all paid back by the end of 5 years, and then you have your money back and you can do it again.
Yeah, IRS rules, just so everyone is on the same page. You do have to make payments every quarter. So, like,
Record.
preferably you want to make monthly payments. That way, you just make sure you're getting that money back in the account, and you're not having to worry about it. You can the money you pay back, you can get redeployed, right? But
Mhm.
you just can't miss more than a quarterly payment, and it has to be all paid back within that 5 years.
Got it. That is some fantastic information. Wow. So we could talk on this stuff all day, Blue, but go ahead and tell the listeners how they can reach out and get in touch with you. Because I know when a good portion of our entrepreneurs are going to listen to this episode, they're going to be like, "Wait a minute, I can be doing what?" And so, how can they get a hold of Quest Education to gather more of this valuable information?
Yeah, so best place would be go to danielblue.me. So that's my website, Daniel Blue, Daniel, and then blue, just like the color. Yes, that is my real last name. So it's danielblue.me, and that website's got a bunch of free information, a bunch of information that might cost you, like a Starbucks coffee. Like, for example, my book, Blueprints to Your Best Retirement, it's like $6. I know it's like less than $10 on Amazon. That book is a simple, easy to digest book. So I talk about solo 401ks, Roth, traditional, self-directed IRAs, how to use your retirement account to invest in real estate, fund a business, some of the things that we've talked about, put it in a book. It's really easy to grasp, and it's not complicated, very straightforward, and you can take action after reading that book. And reading the book, along reading the book, like in the middle of the book, you can take action. So it's not fluff. And then I've got some Forbes articles on there that you can check out where I dive deep into the solo 401k. I've got a podcast as well. It's called How Winners Win. That's on the website. We're on Apple and Spotify and all the major platforms. So How Winners Win. I talk about ways to help people win in their personal, financial life, business life. We talk about self-directed stuff occasionally on that podcast. And then if you do have a 401k or an IRA, and like Chad said, it's like, whoa, I can access this money penalty and tax free. Like, how do I find out more? There's some information there where you can just fill out just some basic contact information, and then someone from my team can reach out to you and see how we can get you from point A to point B.
Here's the best part, folks. For the price of a cup of coffee, it sounds like you can buy this book off Amazon, which, by the way, everything he just said will be in the show notes. So simply scroll down. You'll find a link to the book, link to his website, everything of that sort. Read the book, figure out how this works for you, what's in it for you, and then reach out to Daniel's team who can help you execute and implement what is in that book. So it doesn't get much better than that, folks. Really easy. I love it. I love it. Well, Daniel, before we get out of here, you have to answer a couple of questions that we make everyone answer on the show. So, first of all, I think we heard a lot about it, but what is your superpower in this business?
I would say my superpower came about failing, where I just try to have everything go through me and me being a bottleneck in a lot of different areas. So just being able to maximize my time, right? And that's why it's important to have employees, processes, systems. Just like Chad has a lot going on with his business. I've got a podcast. I've got 12 employees. There's just a lot going on. Married, kid, all that kind of fun stuff. So just being present and everything I can be present in, and just managing my time. My calendar rules me, so I actually don't have a superpower. My superpower is my calendar. My calendar is my boss, my CEO, and I highly recommend, if you're not using a calendar, just use that calendar for everything.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, Blue, we've heard a lot of reasons why you're awesome and how much value you can add to others, but give me some dirt, man. What's your biggest failure and what did it teach you in life?
Man, I was reminded of that failure today. So my daughter's 12. I want to take her to Mexico. So I'm Mexican. My dad lives there, right? And she needs to get a passport. And I was talking to my wife about that, and I'm like, shoot, well, if she needs a passport, like this whole birth certificate thing, like we got to get a passport. Well, her passport and the birth certificate is an issue because my name is not on the birth certificate. I actually wasn't there when she was born. I was getting high. I was 19 years old,
Mm.
and I forgave myself over that because that was, shoot, 12 years ago. But like, it was just a reminder how far I've come. 2 weeks after she was born is when I held her in my hands, and I've been in her life since then. But like, just the thought of not being there when she was born, and being a drug addict at 18, 19 years old, taught me a lot. And not being there for her when she was born, like, every dad and mom, like, that's like that's like the Super Bowl, right? Like you're at the hospital, and to not be there crushed me. But we've all made mistakes. Like we all have to forgive ourselves for things that we've done where we've hurt other people, we've hurt ourselves, because every day is a blessing. Like we're here for a reason. So we can't change the past. We just got to do better moving forward.
Well, you're definitely on Blue 4.0 or something like that now with everything you've got going on. So it sounds like you've come a long way from there. Really love hearing that, man. But that's some awesome stuff to heartfelt right there, you know?
Thank you, brother.
And the last piece of this. So everyone who listens to our podcast knows that one of Quattro's 4 pillars is philanthropy. We are very big on giving back to the world. So Blue, what philanthropic venture can we ask our listeners to support on your behalf?
VegasWish.org. So that's a nonprofit here in Las Vegas. I'm a board member. This nonprofit was founded based off of the October 1 shooting. I don't know if you guys heard of the just a shitty country shooting that happened out here. Jason Aldean was playing, and just Mandalay Bay, just a lot of people died during that concert. And when that happened, man, like it was crazy. Our city was just like this dark cloud over us, and people were just in a funk. And at that same time, our hockey team, Vegas Golden Knights, was kicking ass. And it was just pretty crazy. Like they went to the Stanley Cup their first year, and it was almost like the city rallied around. It was our first professional team, right? And everyone started rooting for them, and it was just like this cool thing where it's like, yeah, all these people got hurt, and it stinks, but like let's take our mind off for 2 hours, right? So me and a buddy, we actually ended up getting season tickets, and we're just like, dude, like let's just give away these tickets and give experiences to other people, first responders, people with cancer, homeless people. Like I love sports. I know what it's like to go to my very first sports game. Like let's give people a pill. Let's give them a pill where just one day, 3 hours, they're in an arena and it's cool as shit. And like they just will remember that experience the rest of their life. So it just snowballed, man. Like we started giving away tickets to, the Raiders are out here, the Golden Knights concert. So we just find people that are in need, and we just hook them up with, our season tickets. And we've had money donated to us to buy other tickets. So just giving people experiences that they can cherish.
I love that. And that is vegaswish.org, correct?
Yep.
Again, folks, in the show notes, I can't think of another worthy cause to support other than that. I mean, giving people who really deserve it experiences, especially of sporting events. That's just fantastic. I love it. Well, Daniel, or Blue rather, in reference to the old school movie, if you've seen it, you my boy Blue. Thanks for
Man,
coming on the
I
show.
wore that short the other day, man, and it's funny when I go into a bar with that shirt. Like, I mean, I'll get like 4 or 5 people like, "You're my boy, Blue." So I do. He's like, I got the old dude like right here, and it's just like an awesome shirt.
That is fantastic. I love it. Well, Daniel, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate the knowledge and nuggets you've dropped here. Look for some people to reach out because I think with our audience, this is some very relevant stuff right now. So looking forward to it.
Hey, Chad, thank you so much for having me on.
All right, everyone. This has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. Until next time, over and out.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.